Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Warhammer Underworlds Embergard, the core game with miniatures, cards, and combat for Warhammer Underworlds' newest edition. Of course, as the previous edition did, this features two new warbands, each that sort of are allied to the warbands that came in the Scaventide box set. They've been doing this for a while now. They sync up this competitive, not quite card game, miniature game, sort of narratively with whatever the current edition of Age of Sigmar is. In this case, we've got, of course, some Skaven. Zicket's Tunnel Pack hanging out with the Emberwatch, which is, they look like they're hunters. They're kind of like Vanguard Chamber Stormcast, and they're associated sort of like friends and foes. So it's 3 Skaven miniatures, 2 Rat miniatures. That's right, 4 Skaven miniatures, 1 Rat miniature, and then 3 Stormcast Eternals in this box set. This box set is a complete standalone core game. You don't need anything else to play outside of the box. The miniatures come in colored plastic, and you also have access to all of the cards for not just the 2 warbands that are in here, but also 2 variant Rivals decks that you can use to play the sort of like variation ways of playing that warband. So you have your faction cards, which are these, the Emberwatch and Zicket's Tunnel Pack. It's a nice way of doing things. You basically have like a divide now in this edition of the game between things that your whole group can do, like Vanguard, Dash, Deadly Sentries, and Raptors of Sigmar for your Emberwatch, your Vanguards, and then the Tunnel Pack, who can skitter, they can warp charge up their weapons, and they can kaboom, a rat with a bomb. Simple yet effective. And your Inspire is on here as well. So these are sort of like what this version, we would call this the faction card sort of like Describer was in the older decks, but then put to like a bigger, larger tarot size. Actually, it's bigger than tarot size. I don't know what you'd call this. This is, I think of this as a faction card from Warcry now. So it's like a Warcry card size in my head. It's almost postage, what's the word? Postcard sized, I think is the kind of colloquial name for it. So yeah, so we have these. You also get cards, which I like now for the core abilities, so some reference cards in here as well, so you're not flipping your rulebook as much. This is the new edition core rules, although these are typically given away for free. I don't know if they're going to be in the near future, but you get your background, your assembly instructions, some examples of older warbands too, like the Vampire warband here, the Court. And then some rough painting guides and stuff as well. Pretty standard fare now for Age of Sigmar. The game hasn't changed very much. There's a few, almost happens every edition, a few sort of like slight core rules changes, but mostly it's a presentation update. I'm not gonna do a full rules review today because there are websites dedicated to Underworlds who are gonna do a much better job of that than me. What I wanna talk about more is what this box means. Your building instructions here on a single sheet and some quick play, some how to quick start as well. I want to talk about what this box means because I'll be honest, I was surprised they did this. We're not that far removed right now from the last edition of this game. It does happen on a pretty consistent schedule, but this box coming out for just after the release of Scaventide feels like they're doing it because they needed to have this for Scaventide, not necessarily because this edition, or this game in particular, needed a new edition kind of right now. We do have our new board, which is just a single battlefield size. This is a bit of a change. There's no lining up boards anymore. You just have one sort of arena that you're fighting in. And then a standard token set. If you have older tokens, they're pretty much the same. So a moved token, a guard token, you got your glory, your damage tokens, your objective tokens, and then your kind of catch-all tokens and stuff in here as well. So yeah, it while it does do new things, it doesn't do enough new that I would call this a completely new game. And if you've played the previous editions of Warhammer Underworlds, there's not a lot that's different here, right? Your stat lines for your attacks are pretty much the same, movement's the same, defense is the same. And I think strategically you could argue this is a new game, but overall, and with sort of the descriptions that have happened of how they're going to be supporting this going forward with digital rules for some of the older warbands, what's going to stay in rotation so they can keep the sort of competitive play, managed and who's going to be available as Rivals decks to play with and who's not going into the future. I think the most similar thing I would compare this to is the second edition of X-Wing. You had a lot of people out there who have a lot of Underworld stuff. And typically new editions of Underworlds have been fully compatible with previous editions of Underworlds. For the first time, that's not the case. This whole presentation change, and with the addition of these warband cards, right? These like new abilities that you can unleash during the course of the game that are sort of like warband wide as opposed to just being model by model. You do have a incompatibility between old products and new products that hasn't really happened. You've been able to roll forward, for the most part, older warbands until basically the introduction of the Rivals decks in the last edition. So we haven't had a full redo in the same way, I think, except for just one time. Dice are exactly the same. So why am I saying this? Well, I think with Warhammer Underworlds, historically speaking, what happened was you had a game that was very compelling at launch, and you can see some conversations between me and Chris at Lords of War Games and Hobbies, who was actually in the original Let's Play that we did way back when, the first edition, which we called it Shadespire for years because that was the name of that box set, came out. It was compellingly priced. I think it was 65 or 70 bucks Canadian for the box set. It was a unique new gameplay experience. It had a lot of TCG card building elements in it. And overall, it was kind of refreshing to see Workshop make something new and unique and different. Had a wide on-ramp because for 65 bucks, you're willing to take a risk on a game. And since then, I think they built a lot of momentum up to the pandemic. It was an in-person game, so the pandemic really took some gas out of it because people couldn't get together to play. And then since then, they've been trying to sort of sputter start the engine on this game's popularity. And I think doing a 1.5 edition, sort of like the second edition of X-Wing, where you had a lot of people invested in the deck building of the first edition, that kind of went away with the second edition. The Nemesis system kept some of the deck building elements where you had a little bit of, you could pick one Rivals deck and mix it with whatever your Warband deck was to make a deck. Kind of carried that through a little bit. And now into this new format card stuff, but same format gameplay-wise. Some new stuff with the board changing size. I don't know who this is for and how well you're going to carry forward getting new players. It's also priced very, very high for the size of the box and the number of contents, right? You have 8 miniatures in this box, lots of cards and cardboard, and it's priced at 130 bucks Canadian. So that's a pretty big ask for a new player. I think existing players will probably be really happy with this. I think if you're a huge Warhammer Underworlds, if you're a diehard Underworlds fan and you're excited about a new way of playing the game, you'll print your digital assets, you'll maybe grab this to get the board. I do think that's one thing that might be a bit contentious, is regardless of if you want to print and play your older warbands, you're going to need to get this. You need to get this guy out of here because you have to play on this new standardized, we don't get to define the battlefield board now, and all your old boards are out, this board's in. This is kind of required to play. You can't just print the rulebook and play. I mean, you could make this. You could just, measure this out and make a board that matches this number of hexes. It's not quite shaped like the older boards, right? Because the hex count disappears over here. You could fudge it probably for sure. But the intention obviously is you buy this box set and you play with what comes in here. We got 2 new warbands so far announced, which is the 2 that are in this box set. There's probably more coming in the future, but for right now, they seem to be focusing on having people carry forward their existing stuff. So this feels like it's mostly for people who already like Warhammer Underworlds. Why am I disappointed by that? I thought Underworlds was great for recruiting people to the hobby. It was a game that passed a lot of tests for me. It passed the Christmas morning test of being quick to put on the table and play. The colored plastic, the ability to just pop all your tokens out, push fit your miniatures and get it on the table. I thought it was a great introductory product for people. But this product seems to be targeted more to the existing customers and just giving them a new edition of the game they already play, with some slight variations in gameplay mechanics. To me, that's always a slippery slope. Making the best game possible doesn't typically work out very well in the long run. And while Games Workshop might not be thinking of this as a recruitment tool anymore, that's fine. They don't need to make new Underworlds players if they don't want to. You do eventually get diminishing returns where people getting kind of just a repackaged version of the same experience lose interest over time. And this product feels like it may be in danger of beginning that journey where you're getting new Coke. You know, it's the same old Coke with a slightly different game board and some new presentation of the warband abilities, but the core gameplay is pretty much the same. You're still scoring glory. You're still going after cards. It's got Stormcast fighting some kind of chaos bad guy in the primary box set. It doesn't really offer a hugely new experience to existing players. So I think for diehards, it'll be refreshing for, you know, the launch cycle and for a little while. I think that for people who are on the fence about whether or not they were going to try Embergard, I don't think this box set necessarily does a lot to convince new people to jump in today. It's a lot of sort of same great taste, new bottle, as opposed to something truly new and unique and different. I had high hopes for what this could be in the future. I think if, here's my personal opinion is, if they just took this game and made it 40K, they would instantly revitalize it. You could do so much, like they're kind of doing that with Kill Team right now, but could you imagine if every month we got a cool 3 or 4 model ball? Like you got Space Marine heroes, but for every faction in 40K and weird sub-factions, you had these beautiful push fit, dynamic painters miniatures for 40K. And you could just reuse the rules. You set it in a Space Hulk, you know what I mean? Set it in a weird enclosed environment, a Blackstone Fortress, you know, gladiatorial pit in Komara. You could set it in under the Imperial Palace or in the Webway or in Trazine's Maze. Hell, you always have the ultimate MacGuffin of Trazine the Infinite having just kidnapped a whole bunch of people and they're trying to fight their way out of his whatever maze. So it could look different every single time. Maybe I'm cribbing notes here. Maybe I'm broadcasting into the future. And if I am, every single one of you owes me $1 when this comes true for having guessed what Games Workshop's planning for maybe some other version of Warhammer Underworlds. But I do honestly think that taking it to a more interesting place, as opposed to sort of like doing something they've kind of already done before, was what I was really hoping for. And so I'm a little bit disappointed, not because this isn't a great product. I don't want to shortchange, I think, the sculptors or the artists or the people that wrote the background, because I think it's all going to be great. It's just, it's iterating on a previously successful model as opposed to doing something new with this format. Because I think this format's great and interesting and there's a lot of potential for it. And they seem like they're just playing it safe inside the sandbox they've already built. So there it is. If you love Underworlds, I think this will be great for you. If you haven't tried Underworlds before, it's your first Underworlds product. It's probably the most refined Underworlds product you could buy. Is it something I'm personally super excited about? I'll play it because I really like Underworlds. And we'll go through and we'll print off and dig at all our warbands. I have like 25 painted Underworlds warbands. I love this game. Does it do anything interesting? Does it challenge your perception of what Underworlds can be? Does it tread a new ground? Not really. It's just another new Underworlds box set. And I think the fact that it sort of invalidates the previous purchases that everybody has in a deck building game, you just shake people off. You know what I mean? You lose more people every time you do that, and the more times you do it over and over again if it's not compatible with what you had before in a meaningful way. Which they've said it's going to be in a print and play mode, but like you still have to, like, can't use your old boards really anymore. You can't use your old decks. You can't use you can use your old dice, your old miniatures, and your old tokens, and you got to refresh the rest. And you still kind of have to buy this box to get the board out of it. Just feels like you're sort of obviously diminishing the return of players without them wanting to make this purchase, and with their purchases from the past kind of holding less and less value. I have a lot of Underworlds terrain boards that up until this edition of the game, I could use all of them if I wanted to, just for fun, because they were all the same shape and size. I can't anymore. I mean, it's just a lot of cardboard plunder that's going to be sitting on a shelf. So there it is, Warhammer Underworlds Embergard. We're going to give it a go. I'm going to paint up the box to match my 2 new spearheads. So these guys will match my Skaven Tide Stormcast and of course, Skaven as well, because the models are super cool. And we'll give this a go in the upcoming weeks, probably me and Mike from Epic Tech Studios, because he's a big painter guy. And we'll play some Underworlds to check out the new format. But today, we're just gonna do a review, talk about the box and what it means and what my personal take on it is. And I hope you enjoyed that. So big thanks for Workshop sending along the box for me to review, and for you guys for watching. Thanks, Tom Ash.